Hi girls, it's Miss Gaska. Today I'm going over English 2, Semester 2, Week 2, Activity 3.2, Proverbs and Folktales. Our learning targets for this activity are to analyze folktales and proverbs to gain insight into the culture of a people, and to determine an author's purpose for including proverbs and folktales in a novel. So to preview, we're going to be reading the novel Things Fall Apart by analyzing, or we're preparing to read the novel Things Fall Apart by analyzing proverbs and folktales of the Igbo and broader African culture. So over here we have a section that tells us about proverbs and folktales. A proverb is a short saying about a general truth, whereas a folktale is a story without a known author that has been preserved through oral retellings. So, proverbs and folktales are one part of a culture's oral tradition. People share proverbs and folktales in order to express important stories, ideas, and beliefs about their culture. So one thing I wanted to point out was where it says oral tradition. So throughout time, ever since humans have existed, they've passed on stories in some way or other. Before there was such thing as written language, people used to draw on the walls, the cave drawings, the hieroglyphics, things like that, in order to pass on messages to others or to tell stories. And many of these stories preserved throughout cultures and times because it was passed down from parent to child, through people in the town sharing stories, through the use of people called bards who would sing or recite poems, things like that, in order to pass on these stories. And that's why we have records of stories that are thousands and thousands of years old because of this tradition of storytelling. So another thing about storytelling is it's a very human thing to do. Everybody knows how to tell a story, whether it's a story that they've made up or a story of something that actually happens to them. Everybody knows how to explain an event. So it's just something that naturally happens in humans, and it's just a wonderful way to celebrate being human is by telling a story. So let's go back to the springboard thing. As we read the novel Things Fall Apart, you will encounter many proverbs and folktales that illustrate the beliefs of the Igbo people. One memorable Igbo proverb is, "Proverbs are the palm oil with which words are eaten." So you're supposed to explain what you think that proverb means. So if you don't know what palm oil is, I recommend looking it up so that you'll be able to answer this question completely and fully. And then think about how the palm oil helps food that you eat, and then compare it with words. So this is kind of like a metaphor. So you're explaining what that means. So then we're going to read these following proverbs and explain what we think they mean. So the proverbs are, "If a child washes his hands, he could eat with kings. When the moon is shining, the cripple becomes hungry for a walk. Since men have learned to shoot without missing, the bird has learned to fly without perching. The clan was like a lizard. If it lost its tail, it soon grew another. I cannot live on the banks of a river and wash my hands with spittle. A man who pays respect to the great paves the way for his own greatness." And I know a lot of you guys struggle with these proverbs, so I'm going to go over them with you, okay? So let's look at the first one. "If a child washes his hands, he could eat with kings." So what this is supposed to be saying is if you keep yourself clean, then even the smallest among us can be considered equal to the mightiest among us, because cleanliness is, you know that phrase, cleanliness is next to godliness, meaning being clean is something that makes you pure, makes you holy. So I'm going to put, if we stay clean, and I think this also applies to our personalities, the things that we do, our actions, and engage in clean behaviors. I'm going to put clean/good behaviors. We are worthy of being equal to kings. So when the moon is shining, the cripple becomes hungry for a walk. I think this means that we don't really necessarily miss what we don't have until there's a use for it. So when the moon isn't shining, assuming this proverb, thinking about the opposite of this proverb, maybe the crippled person might not feel like walking because they just don't need to. But when the moon is shining, suddenly they yearn for it more. So when certain conditions are present, you want something even more. going to say the longing for things you don't have grows stronger. So for example, before I was thinking about getting a Nintendo Switch because I don't have one. But I was like, well, I don't really need one, and all that stuff. But now that all my friends are playing Animal Crossing, I really want one. So that's just an example of how when certain conditions are present, it kind of changes the amount that you want something. So this one says, since men have learned to shoot without missing, the bird has learned to fly without perching. So that just means that we have to adapt to the things that happen around us. Because if we were considering it from the bird's perspective, the bird has had to adapt to men becoming really good at shooting them down. Or else they wouldn't have survived. So in order to survive, we need to adapt to what comes our way. Alright, the clan was like a lizard. If it lost its tail, it soon grew another. So this basically means that if the lower part of the clan, like say the lowest group of the clan, is somehow lost, like maybe they have a disease or maybe they leave the clan or something, another group will take over that spot. Or if people die in the clan, babies will be born in order to take their place. So it could be looked at either of those two ways. So if the clan loses its lower members, the next lowest become the lowest. Or if the elderly pass on, the clan will be repopulated by new babies / children. So this one says, I cannot live on the banks of a river and wash my hands with spittle. Now, spittle is another way of saying spit. So it's saying, like, if you're living on the bank of a river, why would you wash your hands with spit? That would be like taking for granted the things that you have available to you. So take advantage of the wonderful things you have available to you, if you have them. And this is take advantage in a positive way, like take advantage of your resources available to you, not take advantage of, like, manipulate or use. So a man who pays respect to the great paves the way for his own greatness. I don't know what this is supposed to mean, but to me it kind of sounds a little bit like if you suck up, people will notice you. That's not necessarily a positive thing, so I don't think that's what it's trying to say, but that's the only thing I'm coming up with. So if you flatter people above you, they will notice you and think you're great too. So I guess it's kind of like if you're super nice to the people who are in a higher position than you, and if you do everything they say and pay respect to them, then they're going to see you and think of you fondly. So that means that they're going to help you move your way up through the world. That's the best way I could kind of see it. So check your understanding. What general truth believed by the Igbo culture is revealed through the proverb, if one finger brought oil, it soiled the others? I think it kind of is saying, like, if your hands are dirty, well, in a literal sense, if your hands are dirty and you touch other people's hands, their hands are going to get dirty. But in more of a metaphorical sense, it's like, if your behavior is bad, then the people around you are going to, like, kind of catch on from that. And they're going to behave badly too. So, like, if you bring certain traits into your social group, then your social group is going to evolve to include those traits too. So you have to be careful of your actions because others will follow your example. Kind of like the phrase, a bad apple soils the bunch. If you have bad behaviors, the group you're in will adopt those behaviors. Or if someone in your group has bad behaviors, the group will adopt their behaviors. Kind of like being a bad influence. So, here it says, in addition to proverbs, you will also encounter a number of folk tales in the novel. Use the organizer below to record details about the folk tales discussed in class. Then either copy this organizer or create your own to record details about the folk tales you find in Things Fall Apart, especially in chapters 7, 9, 11, or 15. Well, I'm going to save this chart for when you guys complete it for those chapters that I just mentioned, so I'm going to cross this out for now. You don't have to do this right now. I also want to point out here, you have another definition, an archetype. An archetype is a pattern, Archetype is a pattern, symbol, image, or idea that recurs in literature. So something that happens again and again to where it's like kind of a thing that everybody agrees what it means. So for this check your understanding part, you could answer these questions on the side here. What connections can you make between the proverbs and the folktales? How can proverbs and folktales provide insight into a culture? And how and why might an author use proverbs and folktales in a novel? Then writing to sources, explanatory text. Explain how the proverbs and folktales you analyzed in this activity provide insight into the values of the cultures from which they come. Be sure to begin with the topic sentence summarizing your understanding of how the theme of proverbs and folktales can tell us about a culture's values. Include specific relevant details from the proverbs and folktales that you learn about the culture, and cite direct quotations and specific examples from the text. Introduce and punctuate all quotations correctly. Now, since I haven't given you guys any folktales, I want you to do this with just the proverbs in mind, but make sure that you hit all of those bullet points. So I think that's the end of this activity. Yep, sure is. I hope that this was helpful for you, and if you need any additional support, please let me know. I'd be glad to help you with that. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.